we are going to be discussing encountering a trigger on the walk and how to handle those moments when your dog reacts to something on your walk or in public. For reactive dogs, encountering triggers, whether it's another dog or a person or something else, can be especially challenging, particularly in neighborhoods or more secluded areas.
Yeah, that's right. Like in these quiet environments where there's not a ton of stimulus, the one rare trigger that your dog encounters can feel that much more intense. It's often way more challenging than being in public places where there's a constant stream of stimuli. When your dog is surrounded by constant distractions, their nerves can kind of become oversaturated a little bit, and then eventually they just tune out a lot of the triggers and it doesn't really bother them. But when you're in quieter areas, one trigger can be super overwhelming and cause your dog to react strongly.
Now, when you do encounter a trigger, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, your dog may react differently to the same type of trigger on different occasions. For example, one dog may pass by and your dog stays totally calm. But the next dog that passes by could send your dog into an emotional frenzy. This difference often comes down to the energy the other dog is putting off or the complete lack of control from the owner. Dogs with chaotic or unpredictable energy tend to trigger stronger reactions because the uncertainty adds to the whole stress of everyone's situation.
And because it's so difficult to interpret the energy of another dog and the capabilities of another owner on the fly, especially when you're dealing with a dog that you don't know, consistency in your actions is the key. And you can't control the other dogs, but you can control how you proactively handle your dog's reaction to set yourself up for success consistently, regardless of what that other dog is doing. So we're going to go over 2 ways that you can handle these situations when you encounter a trigger.
The first method is the stationary approach. This one is really helpful if you're struggling with your dog's reactions or if you're in a really tight spot where you don't have a lot of room to create distance from the trigger. In this case, step off to the side before the trigger passes by and then put your dog in some sort of stationary command like sit or down. This helps your dog focus on you and remain in a very calm, neutral state while the trigger moves past you. Give yourself plenty of standoff time at the beginning to help yourself out. Keep in mind that sometimes people will be walking by with like flexi leashes or those extendable leashes, and so you might think you have enough room, but they're not paying attention and the dog totally comes into your space.
Yeah, and this seems kind of like a basic technique, but it's super beneficial. And while you wait for that trigger to pass you, you can practice those circle drills that your trainer has shown you. And those are going to make your dog make a choice between fixating and climbing the arousal curve or breaking off and engaging with you visually. And so once that trigger has passed you and your dog is calm towards that baseline again, you can continue on your walk. And so this is a great way to manage the situation without letting your dog escalate into that reactive state.
The second method is the moving approach, which we definitely would recommend if you have the space to do so. In this method, you're going to bounce your dog away from the distraction, stepping further off of the path or even all the way across the street. By moving away from the trigger, you create more distance and give your dog a mental reprieve from the stress. You can bounce out multiple times as you get closer to the distraction, and this gradual distancing helps your dog feel more confident as they realize they don't actually have to confront the trigger head on.
Exactly. And so the key here is to use that bounce technique as many times as needed, depending on how your dog is reacting to that trigger. And so you might want to save your bounce for moments where you feel like the dog is moving from like the look into the lock, into the load, into the lunge phase. Like again, the earlier the better. And that bouncing is if you're on like a field with a bike path and you're heading head-on collision and your dog is climbing and climbing, you tell them follow and you bounce off to the side, giving them a little bit of a reprieve. Okay, I got some space here. And then as we keep going, if you need more room, bounce again. But that allows your dog to feel like flight is an option, but in a controlled way. So we're not going to force them to pass by the dog that's going to come into their space. We're actually going to give them that breath of, whew, okay, I can relax a little bit because mom or dad bounced me out away from the distraction, and we can do that multiple times.
It's important to remember that both of these methods take time, patience, and obviously practice. The goal is to build up your dog's confidence and help them realize they can handle these situations without reacting, and that reacting is just not necessary. When you're practicing stationary or moving, you're going to give your dog the tools they need to stay calm in the face of these triggers.
And so just to recap, like when you encounter the trigger on the walk, you're going to either use the stationary method, which is like stepping aside, putting your dog in that proactive calm position, or you're going to use the moving method where you're going to bounce away from that distraction and give your dog that mental break that they need. And both of these techniques allow you to interrupt the dog's natural reaction and help them learn how to stay calm even when faced with triggers.
With constant practice, you'll help your dog build better impulse control, reduce their reactivity, and make walks a much more enjoyable experience for both of you. Remember, the key to success here is consistency and making sure you're always proactive in managing your dog's reactions.
Good luck, and we'll see you in the next video.